These days, a lot of Americans want to move to Spain, and they have questions. Is it easy to get a job? What kind of visa do I need? Can I eventually get Spanish nationality? I've talked about some of these questions before, but I haven't said much about Spanish nationality because it's complicated and because I hadn't been through the process myself. But now, I think it's time. First, though, a caveat. Immigrant life is often difficult and discouraging. I've told my story on here before, how I moved from Arizona at age 21, overstayed a tourist visa, and worked under the table in Madrid for several years in a semi-fugitive existence, hoping things would eventually work out. They did, but that lifestyle is not for everyone. A lot of the Americans moving abroad in 2025 are baby boomers, now retired, with large nest eggs. If you've got $5,000 a month to spend, or you're selling a house worth $1 million, a lot of things are easier. But I also found that with some youthful enthusiasm and a willingness to flout legal convention, I was able to make good things happen as well. Moving abroad isn't for the easily discouraged. But if you're committed and willing to hang in there despite the inevitable disappointments along the way, you'll probably be able to work things out. I'm currently living the Spanish dream, basically, but it's been a long journey. Hey everybody, it's Daniel. Welcome back to Spain to Go, the best podcast in the entire multiverse for all things Spain. This is episode 100. I was originally thinking about doing something else for episode 100, but life happened, and here we are, talking about Spanish nationality. You'll soon find out why. First, I've got a message from Lydia. Lydia has a podcast of her own over at Got a Case of Wanderlust. Got a Case of Wanderlust is all one word, gotta with a double T. Give it a listen if you would like. Lydia says, as someone living in Spain from the USA, I'm obsessed with your podcasts. Thanks for creating entertaining yet informative content. Thank you, Lydia. I hope you enjoy this episode and that it might be useful for you eventually. However, the issue of Spanish nationality is a bit niche, so you might want to check out some of my previous episodes. I've got one about buying a flat in Spain. I've got one about working in Spain, work permits or working in Spain. I've got both probably. On the blog, Work Culture in Spain and Work Permits in Spain are separate articles at least. I've also talked about the golden visa over there and also here on the podcast. The golden visa is on the way out. I have an article on the blog and an episode here about the digital nomad visa, if that's more your style. Lots of things that might be useful while you're waiting to get Spanish nationality. But let's get on with our story today. There are several ways of getting Spanish nationality. The fastest way seems to be to marry a Spanish person, which will get you nationality after just 1 year living legally in Spain. Getting married is, for some reason, a long and tedious bureaucratic process over here, but if you're going to live abroad for any length of time, you'd better get used to those. If the marrying a Spaniard option is off the table, for whatever reason, you could try one of the following. 1. Be from a former Spanish colony. If you're from Latin America, the Philippines, or somehow Puerto Rico, you can get Spanish nationality after 2 years of legal residency. 2. Be born to Spanish parents or have demonstrable Spanish ancestry. A Spanish grandparent who fled during the Civil War, for example. A lot of people go this route, but it's not easy. I don't just have my grandfather's birth certificate on hand. Do you? Or 3. Get really good at basketball and receive your Spanish nationality by royal decree so you can play on the national team. This isn't common, but it occasionally happens. Or, if all else fails, you could do what I did and just stick around for a very long time. If you're not from a former Spanish colony and not good at basketball, the wait is 10 years of legal residency before you can apply. Once you've applied, it takes a while to get approved and have a Spanish birth certificate issued. And you should consult a lawyer about any of these options that may apply to you. This is a short article or podcast, and I'm not a legal expert of any kind, just a guy who does research online and has been through this myself, by the way. So there's probably some missing nuance here. Sephardic Jews and people from Portugal, Andorra, and Equatorial Guinea apparently also get the 2-year plan. It's complicated. I don't know how Sephardic Jews prove that they're Sephardic Jews, but they are the descendants of people who were expelled from Spain in 1492, theoretically. I don't know how many people have a family tree going back that far. And I've never met anybody like this, but if you are a Sephardic Jew who has Spanish nationality, please get in touch and I'll interview you about the process for a future episode. Anyway, now that I have established that I am not a lawyer, I would like to give a couple extra linguistic caveats. I am using the word nationality because in Spanish they say la nacionalidad española. You may prefer the word citizenship in English. I haven't heard anyone use the Spanish word ciudadanía at any part of this process, though. In Spanish, I've heard ciudadanía used to refer to the citizens of a place as a group, but not for the nationality process. I may also use the words visa and work permit interchangeably. Hire a good lawyer and sue me if you want. Technically, a visa just allows you to enter the country. If you're staying for a long time, the document you want is a work and/or residence permit. However, a lot of times you end up applying for a visa at the Spanish embassy abroad. They put a visa in your passport, which allows you to enter Spain. After that, you have a work permit or a residence permit. Long story. Consult, like I said, a good lawyer. At this point, please allow me a slight tangent on the nationality by royal decree crowd. I don't mean to pick on Spanish national basketball star Lorenzo Brown, born in Rockford, Illinois, who got Spanish nationality in 2022 despite having never set foot in Spain. That was justified because he claimed to admire the Spanish national team and wish to play for it. Wow, admiring a basketball team is enough to get you nationality, apparently. Anyway, I am not good at sports, so I don't have this option, and I understand it's tough to find people around here who are tall enough to play point guard. Someone at the government really wanted to win those basketball games, so they nationalized this American guy and put him on the Spanish team. Okay. In any case, there are probably football players who have done this as well. Finding someone who's good at a sport and giving them nationality so you can put them on your national team is apparently something European countries are doing these days. I also remember that Ricky Martin got Spanish nationality by decree back in 2011. Remember Ricky Martin? I was, at that time, embroiled in the gritty reality of my immigrant hustle and didn't appreciate the fact that the government was just handing out passports to the rich and famous. And guess what? My opinion about almost everything else has changed in the past decade or so, but I still find it very annoying that they do this. Oh well, I'm just a nobody, and that's life. These days, there's a non-lucrative visa for people with enough money or passive income to live in Spain without working. If you've got that kind of money, you can hang out, renew the visa for 5 years, and then apply for long-term residency, and finally, for nationality. Or presumably, you could apply for nationality sooner if you're on the non-lucrative visa and you're from a former Spanish colony. Have I mentioned that you should talk to a lawyer about all this? Moving on. When I was younger, making ends meet on an envelope full of illicit 20s and 50s in Madrid's second-worst neighborhood, this nationality business all seemed pretty abstract. Why bother with bureaucracy, I thought. I'll be 40 by the time I can apply. Little did younger me know that those years were going to pass one way or another, legally or illegally. By the time I reached my late 20s, I had decided I might as well make a plan for adult life. So I overcame my fear of bureaucracy and did a process called arraigo social. That's where you prove you can speak some Spanish, that you're integrated in society and ready to work. You have to wait at least 3 years, although in my case it was longer because of several factors, and then present your documents. If approved, they'll give you papers and a path to citizenship, which isn't a bad deal at all. Like I said, though, I moved to Spain in 2004 and didn't get my arraigo approved until over 7 years later. I was able to work under the table during those years and rent rooms in shared flats. I was in my 20s and life was pretty exciting. But technically, I wouldn't wish that sort of lifestyle on most people. It's rough. When I finally got approved back in 2012, Spain was in the middle of a very long economic crisis. By that time, most of the smart people my age had left. But I was hanging in, for one thing, because I loved Spain, and for another, because I had nowhere else to go. Selling used pickup trucks on a dusty car lot outside Phoenix never really appealed to me, and my anti-authority streak kept and keeps me from pursuing real jobs. So I figured getting legal was a step in the right direction for building a life in Spain. I could work on contract, pay some taxes, and be a regular member of polite society, just like everyone else. The crisis couldn't possibly last forever. The only problem was I had to work a certain number of days a year in order to renew my work permit, and the extreme seasonality of English teaching made that difficult. Also, nobody wanted to have teachers on contract anyway. At least in those days, they preferred to pay cash and avoid the Social Security taxes. So for a while, my life as a legal resident looked a lot like my life as an illegal. Oh well, I managed, scraping together enough on-contract work days to renew a few times. After 5 years renewing your work permit, you can apply for long-term residency, which gives you a few more options. In my case, it also gave me the ability to work as a freelancer, which is what I needed to get my online business off the ground. I walked away from the Spanish labor market and never looked back. When I finally got the long-term residency in 2017, I thought my adventures with Spanish bureaucracy were mostly over. Just hang in for 5 more years and then apply for nationality. But a few weeks later, I met Morena. She had come to Spain for a doctoral program that didn't work out. When she quit, various lawyers told us that the government wasn't going to renew her highly qualified visa, and that she should, in fact, be on her way back to India. But she got another job up in Barcelona, and we did pareja de hecho, starting a long process of getting her a new work and residence permit. The only problem? She had to go back to India when her current permit expired and apply for the new one at the Spanish embassy in Mumbai. This was in early 2020. We barely got her back to Spain before everything locked down. Sitting up in the bed in our tiny flat in Barceloneta, she got a job for some startup and did meetings and phone calls in her sweatpants for several months, while the morons in the government made it illegal to walk outdoors. Morena was able to get legal again because of reagrupación familiar, family regrouping, I guess. Basically, it's because I was legal, we were a couple, and I had the means to support her. Again, not a bad deal, but sending her back to India to apply was expensive. This process might have been easier if I were Spanish. As an American going through it with an Indian, it was long and tedious and presumably could have gone either way. And here's another caveat for those who are hoping to get a quicker nationality by marrying a Spaniard. They count your period of legal residency, so if you enter Spain as the husband or wife of a Spanish person, you still need to get a NIE and register the marriage and all of that. It will be bureaucratic, just hopefully much faster than the bureaucracy for other types of immigrants. 2 weeks to flatten the curve somehow became 2 years of insanity. The morons in the government made sure we lived in a virus-themed dystopia for 2 more winters. The original lockdowns were declared unconstitutional by the courts, but still, those are months of my life I'll never get back. Thanks, Pedro Sanchez. And what came after was just as bad. I don't even want to talk about it. Anyway, I managed not to get arrested for being outside and came through the whole thing with a clean criminal record, which was challenging because what was legal and what was illegal was changing every 5 minutes. By mid-2022, I'd finally completed my 10 years of legal residency in Spain, so I contacted a lawyer about the papers I'd need to apply for nationality. This was going to take a few more years, I knew, but once again, I started to feel like I was coming to the end of the Spanish bureaucratic labyrinth. Just for informational purposes, you need a few documents if you're going to get Spanish nationality. This list is not complete, but here goes. 1. A police background check from your country of origin. In the case of the U.S., it's from the FBI, with a translation and an apostille. 2. Your birth certificate, also with translation and an apostille. 3. A DELE certificate from Instituto Cervantes saying that you speak Spanish at an A2 level or higher. I think A2 is a ridiculously low level to go handing out nationalities to people, but that's just my opinion. 4. A certificate saying you've passed the CCSE test of Conocimientos Constitucionales y Socioculturales de España, an exam that will ask you some basic questions about the Spanish government, the Constitution, and the culture. I mentioned the apostille a couple of times there. If you're a regular person just living your life, you probably haven't ever heard of the apostille of The Hague before now, but it's basically a stamp giving international validity to documents. I used a service for this. It's called continentalis.eu, and they had some trouble with the slowness of the Arizona government, but they got it all done for me. Continentalis.eu. All I had to do was give my lawyer my fingerprints for the background check, pay them some money, and the rest was easy. Of course, you could always do your FBI background check the old-fashioned way. Go to the U.S. consulate and wait for 2 hours while the entire consular section is on coffee break. Then discover that the entire consular section is just one bored lady who you now have to argue with about the basics of how to do her job. She'll charge you $75 for an official FBI fingerprint card, at which point you can wander across town to the scientific police, sort of a Spanish CSI, for fingerprinting, then mail the fingerprints to Washington, D.C., etc., etc., etc. It's a long process. I think my mom was able to apply for the apostille of The Hague for me the previous time I did this, possibly with the office of the Arizona Secretary of State. Either way, it was a huge pain. If you've got the money, continentalis.eu, spelled like it sounds, is a lot easier. They take care of the official translation too. Talk to Joanne, tell her I sent you. Also, consult a lawyer. So, after 10 years of legal residence in Spain, as I said, I gathered the documents. I took the test of Spanish constitutional and sociocultural knowledge. It was pretty easy. It's an easy test if you've been paying attention in your time living in Spain. There's also a free app from the Instituto Cervantes that will help you to study for the questions. The answer to one of the questions on my test was tapas. Hooray for Spanish cuisine. Finally, I went down to Madrid to present everything at the Colegio de Abogados, which my lawyer said might be a little bit faster than going through the immigration office. In cinema, there's something called a MacGuffin. A MacGuffin is an object that moves the plot along, something the characters want, something that inspires them to action. It's the briefcase that the characters in Pulp Fiction are chasing, or the Holy Grail to Monty Python's Knights. For years, my MacGuffin has been a Spanish passport. So I've waited in lines, I've filled in forms, I've refreshed government websites at 8 a.m. to see if new appointments can be made to appear. I've dealt with the tax burden and obeyed the law and done everything I could to be a clean-living, respectable member of the Spanish middle class. Most importantly, though, the quest for Spanish nationality kept me from leaving when times got tough, as they have more than once in the last couple of decades. After presenting the final nationality documents at the Colegio de Abogados, my lawyer told me that the wait could be months or years. Don't check the website for updates every day, he said. It won't make things go any faster. So I didn't, but I checked it from time to time. A year passed, then 15 months. The government website always just said en trámite, in other words, that they were still processing my paperwork. Finally, last week, about 16 months in, I was lying in bed just before turning off the light, and I decided to log on to see the status of my application. Oh wow, there's a lot more text on this website than usual. My heart stopped for a moment. Did this mean they'd resolved my case? My eyes skimmed down the long block of Spanish legalese, looking for the key word. There it was. Denegada. My application for Spanish nationality had been rejected. That's about all I've got for today. I hope you're having a great day wherever you are. There's a to be continued in this somewhere, but I don't know what the to be continued is quite yet. I'll keep you posted. If you're an American hoping to move to Spain or elsewhere in Europe, I've put a link in the show notes for my friend Seppi. She's also an episode of this podcast, actually. Seppi Tabibian. Look for the name, Cepee. Anyway, she's got a guide to visas for living in Europe. It's a visa guide for Americans living in Europe, more specifically. Link in the show notes. She's done a lot of research into the various visa schemes, and she can tell you if you want to live in Europe, what's going on in different countries. I think she said recently that the easiest one these days is Albania, which I don't know much about, but apparently it's pretty nice. There are also, of course, many different types of visa to get you to Spain. I don't talk about every single one in this article, but there's the non-lucrative, the digital nomad, and a few more. You can take a look. Just get Seppi's guide. It's not terribly expensive. Also, have I mentioned that you can support this podcast directly by going to expatmadrid.com/donate? I promise to spend it on legal fees as well as coffee and sparkling water. These days, legal fees might be slightly more expensive than my coffee habit. So expatmadrid.com/donate. You can donate anything from €3 up to whatever you want, actually. I appreciate it, and I will give you a shout out on air next time. I don't know if on air really applies to podcasts, but you know what I mean. You can go to expatmadrid.com, the website, and read the text of this article. There's a lot of links to other things that would be interesting to you if you want there. I've also just got hundreds of articles about life in Spain, so check those out. This is 100 episodes of the podcast, but there are many more articles on the website, expatmadrid.com. You can go to YouTube, Learn Spanish with Daniel on YouTube. All episodes of the podcast are up there. Also, I've got videos for you to learn Spanish. I will be making more of those soon, I promise. This week, I will definitely be able to sit down and make something. I had an idea. I don't remember right now what it was, but I had a pretty good idea for a new Spanish video. Learn Spanish with Daniel describes exactly what you'll get over there. Also, of course, I put other things that have nothing to do with learning Spanish. For example, 5 videos about my bike tour of Extremadura. If you're interested in bike touring, man, have I got a thing for you. Go back and listen to episode 94, my bike tour across Extremadura. It was great. Head over to biketourinspain.com. Tell Raul over there that you want to sign up for a bike tour because you heard about it from Daniel on the Spain to Go podcast. He will appreciate the business. He does a very good job of organizing self-guided bike tours in different regions of Spain. So, biketourinspain.com. On YouTube, I have a series of videos about the recent Extremadura bike tour. They're short and I don't talk a lot, but you've got an idea of the scenery, which is, better than just hearing me talking, I guess. It was really nice. Other than that, please like and subscribe to this podcast. If you're on Spotify, you could give me a review, some number of stars. The higher, the better. I think you can also give stars on Apple Podcasts. You can write a full review on Apple Podcasts, other platforms, who knows. This podcast is available pretty much everywhere. If you look on Pocket Casts or, I don't know, is there something called Deezer? I have no idea. Audible by Amazon or Amazon Music. I think Amazon Music has podcasts available. YouTube Music, it's everywhere. Anyway, thanks for listening and we'll talk soon. Hope you're doing well. Hasta la próxima. Bye.